Hello and welcome to Morton West Theater's production of the Laramie Project. I'm Janine Delmonico, the director of the Laramie Project. As you know, nothing about this year has been easy or normal, and the Laramie Project falls right into that category. In order to maintain our students' health, we had the students perform and record in their own spaces. This created its own set of difficult circumstances. However, even with these crazy times and limitations, the students have risen to the occasion. You will notice the passion and talent in these students as they tell the story of the brutal beating and killing of Matthew Shepard. Due to the nature of the story, there is some disturbing and mature language used. The authors of the Laramie Project are very protective of their language and have used actual interviews from people who knew Matthew and the murderers. Although the initial thoughts about the story may seem like a downer, the theme really is about being better human beings. You can see this in our students' faces and hear it in their beautiful deliveries of their lines. This performance would not be possible without them or, of course, without many others. Mr. Moriarty, who spent countless hours editing literally hundreds of clips together, the District 201 School Board, Dr. Tim Truesdale, Superintendent, Mr. Ricardo Garcia, Director of Fine Arts, Ms. Kavanaugh, Principal at the West Campus, Mr. Dugan, Assistant Principal at the West Campus, and countless others. Thanks to everyone for making this story come to life, and thanks to you, the viewer, for joining us in our journey. Peace.
On November 14th, 1998, the members of the Tectonic Theater Project traveled to Laramie to conduct interviews with the people of the town. During the next year, we would travel to Laramie several times and conduct over 200 interviews. The play you're about to see is edited from those interviews as well as from the journal entries from the members of the company and other found texts. Company member Greg Pirati.
My first interview was with Detective Sergeant King of the Laramie Police Department. I started the interview who's sitting behind his desk, sitting something like this. I was born and raised here. My family is, third generation. My grandparents moved here early 1900s. We had basically three, well, my daughter makes us fourth generation. Quattawa, it's a good place to live. Good people, lots of space. Now, other towns in southern Wyoming are laid on space because of the railroad that came through. It was how far they can go for having to refuel and rewater. And, Laramie was a major stopping point. Not that the towns are spaced so far apart. We're one of the largest states in the country, and the least populated.
There's so much space between people and towns here. So much time for reflection.
Rebecca Hilliker, head of the theater department at the University of Wyoming.
You have an opportunity to be happy in your life here. I found that people here are nicer than they were in the Midwest, where I used to teach, because they were happy. They were glad the sun was shining, and it shines a lot here.
Now what you have is, you have your old-time, traditional type ranchers. They've been here forever. Laramie's been the hub of where they come for their supplies and stuff like that.
Stewardship is one thing all our ancestors taught us.
Eileen Engen, rancher.
If you don't take care of your land, then you ruin it and you lose your living. So you first of all have to take care of it and do everything you can to improve it.
No, I love it here.
Doc O'Connor, limousine driver.
You could have put me back in that mess out there back east. Best thing about it is the climate. The cold, the wind. They say the Wyoming wind will drive a man insane. But you know what? It don't bother me. Well, some of the times it bothers me. But most of the times it don't.
And then you got the university population.
I moved here after living in a couple of big cities.
Philip Dubois, president of the University of Wyoming.
I loved it out there, but you'd have to be out of your mind to let your kids out after dark. And here, in the summertime, my kids play out at night till 11 o'clock, and I don't think twice about it.
And then you got the people who live in Laramie, basically.
I moved here from rural Texas.
Zachy Salmon, Laramie resident.
Now, in Laramie, if you don't know a person, you'll definitely know someone they know. So it can only be 1 degree removed, at most. And for me, I love it. I mean, I love to go to the grocery store, because I get to visit with 4 or 5 or 6 people every time I go. And I don't really mind people knowing my business. Because what's my business? I mean, my business is basically good.
I like trains too. They don't bother me. Well, some of the times they bother me. But most of the times they don't. Even though one goes out every 13 minutes out where I live.
Doc actually lives up in Bossler, but everybody in Laramie knows him. He's also not really a doctor.
They used to carry cattle. Them trains. Now all they carry is diapers and cars.
I grew up in Cody, Wyoming.
April Silva, university student.
So, Laramie's better than where I grew up. I'll give it that.
It's a good place to live. Good people, lots of space. Now, when the incident happened with that boy, a lot of press people came here. One time, one of them followed me out to the crime scene. And, well, it was a gorgeous day. Real clear and crisp. And the sky was that blue that, you'll never be able to paint. It's just sky blue. And the mountains in the background, with a little bit of snow on them. Anyway, this one reporter lady was out there, and she said,
"Well, who found the boy? Who's out here anyway?"
And I said, well, this is a really popular area for people to run. Mountain biking is really big out here, horseback riding. It's just, well, it's close to town. And she looks at me, and she says,
"Who in the hell would want to run out here?"
And I'm thinking, lady, you're just missing the whole point. All you gotta do is turn around, see the mountains, smell the air, see the birds. But they're just nothing but the story. I didn't feel that I was judged. I felt that they were stupid. They're just missing the point. They're just missing the whole point.
It's hard to talk about Laramie now, to tell you what Laramie is to us.
Jedediah Schultz.
If you would have asked me before, I would have told you Laramie is a beautiful town. Secluded enough that you can have your own identity. A town with a strong sense of community. Like everyone knows everyone. A town with a personality that most larger cities are stripped of. But now, after Matthew, I would say that Laramie is a town defined by an accident, by a crime. Like we've become Waco, we've become Jasper. We're a noun, a definition, a sign. We may be able to get rid of that, but it sure will take a while.
Journal entries, members of the company, Andy Paris.
Moisés called, saying he had an idea for his next theater project. But there was a somberness to his voice, so I asked what it was all about, and he told me he wanted to do a piece about what's happening in Wyoming.
Stephen Belber.
Lee told me the company was thinking about going out to Laramie to conduct interviews, and that they wanted me to come. But I'm hesitant. I have no real interest in prying into a town's unraveling.
Amanda Gronich.
I've never done anything like this in my life. How do you get people to talk to you? What do you ask?
Moisés Kaufman.
The company has agreed that we should go to Laramie for a week and interview people. I'm a bit afraid about taking 10 people on a trip of this nature. Must make some safety rules. No one works alone. Everyone carries cell phones. I made some preliminary contacts with Rebecca Hilliker, head of the theater department at the University of Wyoming. She's hosting a party for us our first night in Laramie and has promised to introduce us to possible interviewees.
I must say that when I first heard that you were thinking of coming here, when you first called me, I wanted to say, you've just kicked me in the stomach. Why are you doing this to me? But then I thought, that's stupid. You're not doing this to me. And more importantly, I thought about it, and I decided that we've had such a negative closure on this whole thing, and the students really need to talk. When this happened, they started talking about it. And then the media descended, and all the dialogue stopped. I really love my students because they are free thinkers. And you may not like what they have to say, and you may not like their opinions, because they can be very rednecked. But they are honest and they're truthful. So there's an excitement here There's a dynamic here with my students that I didn't have in the Midwest or in North Dakota. Because there was so much Puritanism that dictated the way that people viewed the world, that a lot of times they didn't have an opinion. You couldn't get them to express an opinion. And quite honestly, I'd rather have opinions that I don't like and have that dynamic in education. There's a student I think you should talk to. His name is Jedediah Schultz.
I've lived in Wyoming my whole life. The family has been in Wyoming for generations. Now, when it came time to go to college, my parents couldn't afford to send me to college, and I wanted to study theater. And I knew that if I was going to go to college, I was going to have to get on a scholarship. And so they have this competition each year, this Wyoming State high school competition. And I knew that if I didn't take first place in duets, that I wasn't going to get the scholarship. And so I went to the theater department of the university, and I asked one of the professors, I was like, hey, I need a killer scene. He's like, oh, here you go. This is it. And it was from Angels in America. So I read it, and I knew that I could win first place if I did a good enough job. So when the time came, I went to go tell my mom and dad so that they would come to see me in the competition. Now, you gotta understand, my parents, they go to everything. Every ball game, every hockey game, like everything I've ever done. And they took me into their room, and they told me that if I did that scene, that they would not come to see me in the competition. Because they believe that it is wrong, that homosexuality is wrong. They believed it that strongly that they didn't want to come see their son do probably the most important thing in his life to that point. And I didn't know what to do. I had never, ever gone against my parents' wishes. So I was kind of worried about it. But I decided to do it. And all I can remember about the performance is that when we were done, me and my scene partner, we walked up to each other and we shook hands, and there was a standing ovation. Oh man, it was amazing. And we took first place, and we won. And that's how come I can afford to be here today at the university, because of that scene. It was one of the best moments in my life. And my parents weren't there. And to this day, that was the one thing that my parents didn't see me do. And thinking back on it, I think, well, why did I do it? Why did I oppose my parents? Because I'm not gay. So why did I do it? And I guess the only honest answer I could give is that, well, I wanted to win. It was such a good scene. It was like the best scene. Do you know Mr. Kushner? Maybe you can tell him.
Company member Greg Purati.
We arrived today at the Denver airport and drove to Laramie. The moment we crossed the Wyoming border, I swear I saw a herd of buffalo. Also, I thought it was strange that the Wyoming sign said
Wyoming. Like no place on earth.
Instead of Wyoming, like no place else on earth.
Company member Lee Fondakowski.
I stopped at a local inn for a bite to eat, and my waitress said to me,
Hi, my name is Debbie. I was born in 1954, and Debbie Reynolds was big then, so yes, there are a lot of us around. But don't worry, I won't slap you if you put your elbows on the table.
Today, the company tried to explain to me to no avail what chicken fried steak was.
Now, are you from Wyoming, or are you just passing through?
We're just passing through.
Company member Barbara Pitts.
We arrived in Laramie last night. Just past the Welcome to Laramie sign, population 26,687. The first thing that greeted us was a Walmart. In the dark, we could be on any main drag in America. Fast food chains, gas stations. But as we drove into the downtown area by the railroad tracks, the building still looked like a turn-of-the-century Western town. Oh, and as we passed the University Inn, on signs where amenities such as heated pool or cable TV are usually touted, it said hate is not a Laramie value.
Greg Pierotti.
Today, I met with two longtime Laramie residents, Allison Mears and Marge Murray, two social service workers who taught me a thing or two.
Well, what Laramie used to be like when Marge and I were growing up, well, it was mostly rural.
Yeah, it was. I enjoyed it, you know. My kids all had horses.
Well, there was more land, you know. You could keep your pet cow, your horse, your little chickens, you know, just your little bit of acreage.
Yeah, I could run around the house in my all-togethers, do the housework while the kids were in school, and nobody could see me. And if they got that close...
Well, then that's their problem.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I got this expression correct. In your all-togethers?
Well, yeah, honey. Why wear clothes?
Now, how's he going to use that in his play?
So this was a big ranching town?
Oh, not just ranching. This was a big railroad town at one point before they moved everything to Cheyenne, Green River, and Omaha. So, well, now it's mostly just a drive-through spot for the railroad because, what was it, the 50s? Well, they had one big roundhouse that had such a shop they could build a complete engine.
They did. My mom worked there.
Your mom worked in a roundhouse?
Yep. She washed engines. Her name was May. We used to, you know, sing that song for her. You know that song.
What song?
Run for the roundhouse, Minnie. They can't corner you there.
But I'll tell you, Wyoming is bad in terms of jobs. I mean, the university has the big high whoop-de-doo jobs, but unless you're a professional, well, most of the people are working minimum wage jobs.
Yeah. I've been either in the service industry or bartending most of my life. Now I know everybody in town.
And she does.
And I do know that, I'll tell you. Here in Laramie, there's a difference and there has always been. What it is a class distinction. It's about the well-educated and the not educated. And the ones that are educated don't understand why the ones that are not educated don't get educated. That's why I told you before that my kids had to fight because their mother was a bartender. Never mind, I was the best damn bartender in town.
And she was.
That's not bragging. That's fact.
Here in Laramie, if it weren't for the university, well, we'd just be SOL.
What's SOL?
Well, do I have to say it? It's shit out of luck. Oh, Lordy, you sure are getting an education today.
Yeah, I guess I am. So let me just ask you, what was your response when this happened to Matthew Shepard?
Well, I've been close enough to the case to know many of the people. I have a daughter that's on the sheriff's department. As far as the gay issue, I don't give a damn one way or the other as long as they don't bother me. And even if they did, I just say no thank you. And that's the attitude of most of the Laramie population. They might poke one if they were in a bar situation, you know, they've been drinking, they might actually smack them in the mouth. But then they'd just walk away. Most of them said they would just say, I don't swing that way, and whistle on about their business. Laramies live and let live.
I'd say Marge probably knows a lot more except she's willing to say, and we have to respect her for that.
Well, where are you going with this story?
Oh, well, we still haven't decided. Once you're finished, we're going to try to bring it around to Laramie.
Okay then, there are parts I won't tell you.
Company member Andy Paris.
Today, for the first time, we met someone who actually knew Matthew Shepard. Trish Steger, owner of a shop in town, referred to him as Matt.
Matt used to come into my shop. That's how I knew him.
It was the first time I had heard him referred to as Matt instead of Matthew. Did he go by Matt to everyone?
Well, on the 2nd of October, I get a phone call about 10 after 7.
Doc O'Connor.
It was Matthew Shepard. And he said, can you pick me up at the corner of 3rd and Grand? So anyhow, I pull up to see who Matthew Shepard, you know, it's a little guy, about 5'2", soaking wet. I bet you 97 pounds tops. They said he weighed about 110, but I wouldn't believe it. They also said he was 5'5" in the newspapers, but this man was only really about 5'2", maybe 5'1". So he walks up to the window. I'm going to try and go into steps here so you can better understand the principle of this man. So he walks up to the window, and I say, are you Matthew Shepard? And he says, yeah, I'm Matthew Shepard, but I don't want you to call me Matthew or Mr. Shepard. I don't want you to call me anything. My name is Matt, and I want you to know that I'm gay, and we're going to a gay bar. Do you have a problem with that? And so that's when I said, How are you paying? You see, Laramie doesn't have any gay bars. And for that matter, neither does Wyoming. So he was hiring me to take him down to Fort Collins, Colorado, about an hour away. Man was a blunt little shit. You see what I'm saying? He always was. But I liked him. See what I'm saying? Because he was straightforward. Maybe gay, but straightforward. You see what I'm saying?
I don't know, how does any one person ever really tell about another? You should talk to my sister, Romaine. She was very good friends with Matthew.
I mean, we never really called him Matthew. Most of the time we just called him Choo Choo, because we used to call him Matthew and we just called him Choo Choo. And whenever I think of Matthew, I always think of his incredible, beaming smile. I mean, he'd just walk in a room and he'd just be like, he just made you feel great. And he used to stare people down in the coffee shop because he wanted to sit in the end seat so he could talk to me while I was working. And if someone was sitting in a seat, he'd walk in and sit down and just stare at them until they left. And then he would claim his spot. But Matthew definitely had a political side to him. I mean, he really wanted to get into political affairs. That's all his big interest was watching MSNBC and CNN. I mean, that's all I ever saw his TV tuned to. So he was just really smart in political affairs, but not too smart in common sense things. So he moved to Laramie to go to school.
Matthew was very shy when he first came in.
John Peacock, Matthew's academic advisor.
To the point of being somewhat mouthy, I'd almost say. He was having some difficulties adjusting, but this is home for him, and, well, he made it quite clear. And so, his mouthiness, his shyness gave way to a person who was excited about this track he was going to embark on. He was just figuring out wanting to work on human rights, how he was going to do that. And when this happens, this person begins to bloom a little bit. He was starting to say, wow, there are so many opportunities here. There are things I can finally do in this world. I can be important.
I actually talked to Matthew about 48 hours before his attack, and he told me he joined the gay and lesbian group on campus, and he was getting ready for Pride Week and whatnot. He was really stoked about school. Yeah, he was really happy about being there.
And in retrospect, and I can only say in retrospect, of course, I think that's who he was headed, towards human rights, which only adds to the irony and tragedy of this all.
Let me tell you something else here. There's more gay people in Wyoming than meets the eye. I know for a fact. They're not particularly the what do you call them? The queens. The gay people. The queens. Run around faggot type people. No. They're the ones that throw bales of hay, jump on horses, brand them, and kick ass. You see what I'm saying? As I always say, don't fuck with the Wyoming queer, because they will kick you in your fucking ass. But that's not the point of what I'm trying to say. I know a lot of gay people in Wyoming. I know a lot of people, period. I've been lived up here for some 40 odd years. And I don't think Wyoming people give a damn one way or another if you're gay or straight. That's just what I said. It doesn't matter. Now, if there's 8 men and 1 woman in a Wyoming bar, which is often the case, now you stop and think. Who's getting what? You see what I'm saying? Now, geez, it don't take a big intelligent mind to figure that one out.
My understanding when I first came here
Catherine Connolly.
is that I was the first out lesbian or gay faculty member on campus, and that was in 1992, so that wasn't that long ago. They asked in my interview what my husband did, and so I came out then. Do you want a funny story? When you first get here as a new faculty member, there's all these things you have to do. And so I was in my office, and I noticed that this woman had called. I thought it was, a health insurance phone call, something like that. And so I called her back, and I said, "This is Catherine Connolly returning your phone call." And I could hear her. She's working on her keyboard, clicking away. And she said, "Oh, it's you." And I thought, this is bizarre. And she said, I hear you're gay. I hear you are." And I said, uh-huh. And she said, I hear you came as a couple. I'm one too. Not a couple, just a person. And so she was a kind of lesbian who knew I was coming and wanted to meet with me immediately. And she later told me that there were other lesbians she knew who wouldn't be seen with me, that I could irreparably taint them, that just to be seen with me could be a problem.
When I moved here, I knew it was going to be hard as a gay man.
Jonas Sloaner.
But I keep telling myself people should live where they want to live, and there'd be times I would go down to Denver and I would go to the gay bars and people would ask me where I'm from and I'd say, Laramie, Wyoming. And I met so many men on there from Wyoming. So many gay men who grew up here and they're like, this is not a place where I can live. How can you live there? I had to get out. Grr, grr, grr. Every once in a while there'd be a guy. Oh gosh, I miss Laramie. I mean, I really love there. That's where I want to live. And they get the starry eye look, and I'm like, hey, that's where I want to live. Do it. I mean, imagine if more gay people in small towns. But it's easier said than done, of course.
Today we are moving from our motel and heading for the Best Western.
Moisés Kaufman.
My hope is that it is a better Western.
Amanda Gronich.
Today we divided up to go to different churches in the community. Moisés and I were given a Baptist church. We were welcomed into the services by the Reverend herself standing at the entrance of the chapel. This is what I remember of her sermon that morning.
My dear brothers and sisters, I am here today to bring you the word of the Lord. It is a simple truth I tell to my colleagues, and I'm going to tell it to you today. The word is either sufficient or it is not. Scientists tell me that human history is 5 or 6 billion years old. After all, what's a billion years, give or take? The Bible tells me that the world is 6,000 years old. The word is either sufficient or it is not.
The sociology of religion in the West.
Stephen Mean Johnson, Unitarian minister.
Dominant religious traditions in this town, Baptist, Mormon, they're everywhere, you know. They're not just Salt Lake. They're all over. They're like jam on toast down here.
The Mormon church has a little different things going on that irritate some folks.
Doug Laws, stake ecclesiastical leader for the Mormon church.
And that is that we absolutely believe that God still speaks to man today. We don't believe that it happened, and some folks, they wrote it in the Bible. God speaks to us today, and we believe that. We believe that the prophet of the church has the authority to receive inspiration and revelation from God.
So the spectrum would be on the left side of that panel. So far left that I'm probably sitting by myself is me and the Unitarian Church. Unitarians are, by and large, humanists, many of whom are atheists. I mean, you know, we're not even sure we're a religion. And to my right of the spectrum, to his credit, Father Roger, Catholic priest, who is well established here, and God bless him. He did not equivocate at all when this happened.
I was really jolted because, you know, when we did the vigil, we wanted to get other ministers involved, and we called some of them, and they were not going to get involved. And it was like, we're going to stand back and see which way the wind is blowing. And that angered me immensely. We're supposed to stand out as leaders. I thought, wow, what's going on here?
God has set boundaries, and one of those responsibilities is to learn. What is it that God wants? So you study scripture, you look to your leaders. Then you know what the bounds are. Now once you know what the bounds are, then you kind of get a feel for what's out of bounds. You know, a proclamation came out on the family. A family is defined as one woman, one man, and children. That's a family. That's as clear as you could state it. There's no sexual deviation in the Mormon church. No leniency. We just think it's out of bounds.
I warn you, you will be mocked. You will be ridiculed for the singularity of your faith. But you let the Bible be your guide. It's in there. It's all in there.
The Christian pastors, many of the conservative ones, were silent on this. Conservative Christians use the Bible to show the rest of the world what it says in the Bible. And most Americans believe, and they do, that The Bible is the Word of God, and how are you going to fight with that?
I am a biblicist, which means the Bible doesn't need me to be true. The Bible is true whether I believe it or not. The Word is either sufficient or it is not.
I arrived here in Laramie on September 15th. I looked around, tumbleweed, cement factory, and said, what the hell am I doing in Wyoming? 3 weeks later, I found out what the hell I'm doing in Wyoming.
I had breakfast this morning with a university student named Zubaida Ullah. She's an Islamic feminist who likes to do things her own way.
I've lived in Laramie since I was 4. Yeah, my parents are from Bangladesh. 2 years ago, because I'm Muslim, I decided to start wearing a headscarf. That's really changed my life in Laramie. Yeah. Like, people say things to me like, why do you wear that thing on your head? Like, when I go to the grocery store, I'm not looking to give people Islam 101. You know what I mean? So I'll be like, well, it's part of my religion. And they'll be like, this is the worst part, because they'll be like, I know it's part of your religion, but why? And it's, how am I supposed to go into the whole doctrine of physical modesty and my own spiritual relationship with the Lord standing there with my pop and chips? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, it's so unreal to me that a group from New York would be writing a play about Laramie. And then I was picturing it like, you're going to be writing a play about my town. You're going to be on stage in New York, and you're going to be acting like you're us. That's so weird.
Hello.
Yes, hello? My name is Mena Granich, and I'm here in Laramie working with the theater company. I went to the Reverend, your wife's church on Sunday, and I was extremely interested in talking with the Reverend about some of her thoughts about current events.
Well, I don't think she'll want to talk to you. She has very biblical views about homosexuality. She doesn't condone that kind of violence, but she doesn't condone that kind of lifestyle, you know what I mean? And she was just bombarded with press after this happened, and the media has just been terrible about this whole thing.
Oh no, I really understand. It must have just been terrible.
Oh yes. I think we're all hoping this just goes away.
Well, do you think maybe I could call back and speak with your wife just briefly?
Well, alright. You can call her back tonight at 9 o'clock.
Oh, thank you so much. I'll do that.
Today, Barbara and I went to the Fireside Bar, which was the last place that Matthew was seen in public.
The Fireside. Definitely feels like a college bar with a couple of pool tables and a stage area for karaoke night. Still, the few regulars in the late afternoon were hardly the college crowd.
The first person we talked to was Matt Mickelson, the owner.
My great-grandfather moved here in 1862. He owned Laramie's first opera house. It was called Old Bullfront. And in 1870, Louisa Grandma Swain cast the first women's ballot in any free election in the world. And that's why Wyoming is the equality state. So what I want to do is to reestablish my bar business as the Old Bullfront Opera House and the Good Time Emporium. You know, I want to have a restaurant. I want to have a pool hall. I want to have a gift shop and do all this shit, you know, every night's ladies' night. So the Fireside is the first step towards the Old Bullfront Opera House and the Good Time Emporium.
So what about the night Matthew Shepard was here?
Well, we had karaoke night that night. 20 or 30 people here, and Matthew Shepard, he came in sitting right about where I'm sitting, you know, just minding his business. I mean, if you want to talk to somebody, you should probably talk to Matt Galloway, because he was the kid that was bartending that night. You'd have to meet him. His character sure stands for itself. Hey, is Galloway bartending tonight?
Okay, I'm gonna make this brief. Quick, get it over with. It'll be everything. Factual. Just facts. Okay, here we go. 10 o'clock, I clock in, usual time, Tuesday nights. 10:30, Matthew Shepard shows up. Alone, sits down, orders a Heineken.
Philip Bree, friend of Matthew Shepard.
Matt liked to drink Heineken and nothing else. Heineken had to pay $9.50 for a six-pack. He'd always buy the same beer.
So what can I tell you about Matt? If you had 100 customers like him, it'd be the the most perfect bar that I've ever been in, okay? And nothing to do with sexual orientation. Absolute mannerisms, manners, politeness, intelligence, taking care of me's and tips, everything. Conversation, dress nice, clean cut. Some people you just know. Sits down, please, thank you. Offers into within their vocabulary. So he kicks it there. Didn't seem to have any worries or like he was looking for anyone. Just enjoy his drink and the company around. Now, approximately 11:45, 11:30, 11:45. Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson come in. I didn't know their names then, but they're the accused. They're the perps. They're the accused. They walk in just very stone-faced, dirty, grungy, rude, gimme, that type of thing. And, as you know, pay for a pitcher with dimes and quarters, which is, you don't forget that. You don't forget that. $5.50 in dimes and quarters, it's a freaking nightmare. Now, Henderson and McKinney, they didn't seem intoxicated at all. They just walked in, ordered their beer, and took the pitcher with them back there in the pool room. Now, next thing I know, approximately 30 minutes later, they're just sort of walking around. No beer. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm not going to ask them if they want another one, because obviously they just paid for a pitcher with dimes and quarters. I have a real good feeling they don't have any more money.
Romaine Patterson.
Money meant nothing to Matthew because he came from a lot of it. He would hand over his wallet in 2 seconds because money meant nothing. His shoes might have meant something. You can say it was robbery, but I don't buy it for even an iota of a second.
Then a few moments later, I looked over and Aaron and Russell had been talking to Matthew Shepard.
Aaron said that a guy walked up to him and said that he was gay and wanted to get with Aaron and Russ.
Kristen Price, girlfriend of Aaron McKinney.
And then he got aggravated with it and told him that he was straight and didn't want anything to do with him and walked off. He said that is when he and Russell went to the bathroom and decided to pretend they were gay and get him in the truck and rob him.
Okay, no. They stated that Matt came out of them, that he approached them. I absolutely, positively disbelieve and refute that statement 100%. Refute it. I'm going to give you 2 reasons why. 1, character reference. Why would he come out of them? He wasn't approaching anyone else in the bar. Why them? They say he's gay. He's a flaming gay. He's going to come on to people like that? That's bullshit. He never came on to me. Hello? He came on to them? I don't believe it. 2, territorialism is the word that I'm going to use for this. And that's the fact that Matt had been seen here. Aaron and Russell had been in the pool room. Upon their first interaction, they were in Matt's area, in the area that Matt had been seen all night. So who approached who by that?
But Matthew was the kind of person, he would never not talk to someone for any reason. If someone started talking to him, he'd just be like, oh, blah, blah, blah. He never had any problem just striking up a conversation with anybody.
Matt did feel lonely a lot of times. Me knowing how gullible Matt could be, could have walked right into it. The fact he was at the bar, alone without any friends, made him that much more vulnerable.
So the only thing is, and this is what I'm testifying to because I'm basically the key eyewitness in all this. Basically what I'm testifying is that I saw Matt leave. I saw 2 people leave with Matt. Didn't see their faces, but I saw the backs of their heads. At the same time, Henderson and McKinney were no longer around. You do the math.
Actually, I think the DJ was the last one to talk to him on his way out that night. Gave him a cigarette or something. Her name is Shadow.
I was the last person that Matt talked to before we left the fireside. I was just bushing around with my shit, and he stopped me. I stopped him, actually, and he's like, hey, Shadow, da-da-da, and I was like, hey, what, man, you getting ready to leave? He's like, yeah, man, this and that. But then I noticed them 2 guys, and they stood outside. You could see it. They were standing there, and he was looking over to them, and they were looking back at him. And I stood and talked to Matt for a good 10 minutes. And you've seen the guys with him. You've seen him getting like worried, you know, like anxious to leave and shit. So when they took off, I seen it when they took off. It was in a black truck. It was a small truck, and the three of them sat in the front seat, and Matt sat in the middle. And I didn't think nothing of it, you know. I didn't figure the guy was going to be like that.
A friend of Aaron McKinney.
Oh, I've known Aaron a long time. Aaron was a good kid. I liked Aaron a lot. That's why I was shocked when I heard this. I'm like, I know he was living out far at his trailer house, is what he told me, with this girl. They just started dating last summer. They must have gotten pregnant as soon as they started dating. You know, because they had a kid. He was only 21 years old. But he was running around with the kid. You see, that's the kind of person Aaron was. Just like he always dressed in like big clothes, you know? And like Tommy Hilfiger, Polo, Gucci. At the time I know him, he was just a young kid trying to, trying to fit in. You know, he would act cool, he would try to act tough, but you can get in his face about it. He would like back down as if he was some kind of scared kid.
Sherry Anienson.
Russell was just so sweet. He was the one who was the Eagle Scout. I mean, his whole presence was just quiet and sweet. So of course it doesn't make sense to me, and I know people snap and whatever, and like, it wasn't a real intimate relationship. I was just his landlord. I did work with him down at the Chuck Wagon too. And I remember like, at the Christmas party, he was just totally drunk out of his mind. I mean, we were all pretty much just party time. And he wasn't belligerent. He didn't change. His personality didn't change. He was still the same little meek Russell. And I remember him saying, "When you get a chance, Sherry, can I have a dance?" Which we never did get around to doing that, but now I just want to shake him, you know? What were you thinking? What in the hell were you thinking?
I've been out there 4 times. I've taken visitors. That place has become a pilgrimage site. Clearly, it was a very powerful, personal experience to go out there. It is so stark and so empty. You can't help but think of Matthew there for 18 hours in nearly freezing temperatures. With that view, isolated up there, and the my God, why have you forsaken me? Comes to mind.
Company member Greg Pierotti.
Philip Bree. Fred and Matthews took us to the fence this morning. I broke down the minute I touched it. I felt such a strong kinship with this young man. On the way back, I made sure no one saw me crying.
Lee Fondakowski.
Greg was crying on the way back. I couldn't bring myself to tears, but I felt the same way. I have an interview this afternoon with Aaron Krappels. He's with on Matthew out there at the fence. I don't think I'm up for it right now. I'll see if someone else can do it. Well, I took off on bicycle about 5 p.m. on a Wednesday from my dorm. Just kind of felt like going for a ride. So I went up to the top of Cactus Canyon. And I'm not super familiar with that area. So on my way back down, I didn't know where I was going. I was just sort of picking the way as I go. It just makes me think that God wanted me to find him because there was no way I was going to go that way. So I was in some deep ass sand and I wanted to turn around, but for some reason I kept going. And I went along and there was this rock on the ground and I just drilled it. I went over the handlebars and ended up on the ground. So I got up and I was just kind of dusting myself off. And I was looking around and I noticed something. It turned out to be Matt. He was just lying there by a fence, and I thought it was a scarecrow. I was like, Halloween's coming up. Thought it was a Halloween gag, so I didn't think much of it. So I got my bike, walked it around the fence that was there. It was a bug type fence, and got closer to him, and I noticed his hair. And that was a major key to me. Noticing it was a human being was his hair. Because I just thought it was a dummy. Seriously, I noticed. I even noticed the chest going up and down, and I still thought it was a dummy. You know, thought it was some kind of mechanism. But when I saw hair, I knew it was a human being. So I ran to the nearest house, and I just ran as fast as I could and called the police.
I responded to the call.
Officer Reggie Flutie.
When I got there, at first, the only thing I could see was partially somebody's feet. So I got out of my vehicle and I raced over. It appeared to be a young man, 13, 14 years old. Because he was so tiny laying on his back, and he was tied to the bottom end of a pole. I did the best I could. The gentleman who was laying on the ground, Matthew Shepard, he was covered in partially dry blood all over his head. There was dry blood underneath him, and he was barely breathing. He was doing the best he could. I was going to breathe for him, but he wouldn't open his mouth. He wouldn't open his mouth for me. He was covered in, like I said, partially dry blood all over his head. The only place that seemed that he didn't have any dry blood on him, on his face, was where he appeared to have been crying. His head was distorted, you know? It did not look normal. It looked as if he had a real harsh head wound.
I was working in the emergency room the night that Matthew Shepard was brought in. I don't think that any of us can remember seeing a patient in that condition for a very long time. Those of us who have worked in big city hospitals have seen this, but there are some of us here who have not worked in big city hospitals, and certainly not something you'd expect here. You expect this, you expect these kinds of injuries to come from a car going down a hill at 80 miles an hour. You expect these kinds of injuries to come from something like that. This horrendous, this terrible thing. But you don't expect to see this from someone doing this to another person. The ambulance report said it was a beating, so we knew.
There was nothing I could do. I mean, if there was anything that I could have done to help him, I would have done it. But there was nothing. And I was yelling at the top of my lungs at him, trying to get something out of him. Like, hey, wake up, hello. But he didn't move. He didn't flinch. He didn't anything.
He was tied to the fence and his hands were thumbs out in a cuffing position, the way we handcuff people. He was bound with a real thin white rope. It went around the bottom end of a pole about 4 inches up off the ground. His shoes were missing. He was tied extremely tight, so I used my boot knife in order to slip it in between the rope and his wrists. I had to be extremely careful not to harm Matthew any further.
Your first thought is, well, certainly you'd like to think it's somebody from out of town who comes through and beats somebody. I mean, things like this happen. Shit happens, and it happens in Laramie, but when there's been somebody who's been beaten repeatedly, certainly this is something that offends us. Yes, I think that's a good word. It offends us.
He was bound so tight. I finally got the knife through. I'm sorry. We rolled him over to his left side, and when he stopped breathing, I immediately rolled him back onto his back, and it was just enough of an adjustment. It gave me enough room to cut him free. There, I'd seen the EMS unit trying to get to the location. Once the ambulance got there, we put a neck collar on him, placed him on a backboard, and scooted him from underneath the fence. Then Rob drove the ambulance to Iverson Hospital's emergency room.
Now, the strange thing is, 20 minutes before Matthew was brought in, Aaron McKinney was brought in by his girlfriend. Now, I guess he had gotten into a fight later that night back in town. So I'm working on Aaron, and then the ambulance comes in with Matthew. Now, at this point, I don't know if there's a connection at all. So I tell Aaron to wait, and I go treat Matthew. So there's Aaron in one room of the ER, and Matthew just 2 doors down. Now, as soon as we saw Matthew, it was very clear that his care was beyond our capabilities. Called the neurosurgeon at Poudre Valley, and he was on the road in an hour and 15 minutes, I think.
I saw a picture of Matthew. Days later, I saw a picture of Matthew. I would have never recognized him.
Then, 2 days later, I found out the connection, and I was very struck. They were 2 kids. They were both my patients, and they were 2 kids. I took care of both of them, of both of their bodies. For a brief moment, I wondered if this is how God feels when He looks down at us. How we are all His children. Our bodies, our souls. And I felt a great deal of compassion for the both of them.
John Peacock, Matthew's academic advisor.
Well, the news reports started trickling out on Thursday, but no names were mentioned. The brutality of the crime is not mentioned. All that was mentioned was there was a man, a Laramie man, found beaten, out on a prairie basically. Later on in the evening, they mentioned his name, and it was like, that's not Matthew Shepard. That's not my students. That's not this person who I've been meeting with.
I was in the coffee shop,
Romaine Patterson.
and someone pulled me aside and said, I don't know much, but they say there's been a man beaten in Laramie, and they say his name is Matthew Shepard. And he said to me, do you think it's our Matthew? And I said, well, yeah, it could be our Matthew. And so I call up my sister Trish, and I said, tell me what you know. I was like, tell me anything you know, because I don't know anything.
So I'm talking to my sister on the phone, and that's when the whole story comes up on Channel 5 News. And it's just like, ba-boom.
And the news reports kept rolling in. Young University of Wyoming student, his age, his description, and it was like, man, oh my God.
And, I felt sick to my stomach. Just instantly sick to my stomach. And I had to tell Romaine, yes, it was Matthew. It was your friend.
Well, I'll tell you what's overwhelming.
Matt Galloway.
Friday morning, first find out about it. Go to class, walk out, boom, there it is in the branding iron. So immediately I drive to the nearest newsstand to buy a copy of Laramie Boomerang. Buy that, go home. Before I can even open the paper, my boss calls me. He says,
Did you hear what happened?
I'm like, yeah.
Well, was he in the bar Tuesday night?
I go, yes. Yes, he was.
You've got to get down to the bar, right now. We've got to talk about this. We've got to discuss what's gonna go on.
By this time, I was starting to get upset, but still, the severity wasn't out yet.
It was a Thursday afternoon.
Rulon Stacy at the Poudre Valley Hospital.
I got a call. We got a kid in from Wyoming, and it looks like he may be the victim of a hate crime. We also have a couple of newspaper reporters who are asking questions. And so we decided that we needed one spokesperson. As CEO, I'll do that, and I'll try to gather all the information that we can.
And then I watched the 10 o'clock news that night when they started talking about the nature and the seriousness of it all.
So I'm on the phone with Mickelson, and he's like,
we need to go to the arraignment so we can identify these guys and make sure that these guys were actually in the bar.
So we go to the arraignment.
Our focus today turns to Laramie, Wyoming, and the Albany County Courthouse, where we see Aaron James McKinney and Russell Arthur Henderson being charged for the brutal beating of Matthew Shepard, a gay University of Wyoming student.
The arraignment was on Friday, right around lunchtime, and I said, I'm just going. It's right down the street, and so I walked a couple of blocks and I went. Has anybody told you about the arraignment? There were probably about 100 people from town there, and probably as many news media by that point. A lot more of the details had come out. The fact that the perpetrators were kids themselves, local kids that everyone who's from around here has some sort of relationship to. And what everyone was really, I think, waiting on pins and needles to see what would happen when they walked in. And what happened was there's 200 people in the room at this point, and they came in their complete orange jumpsuits and shackles, and you could have heard a pin drop. It was incredibly solemn. I mean, half the people were crying at this point. And then the judge did a reading. There was a reading of the evidence from the prosecution, and it's a statement of the facts, and the reading of the facts was:
The essential facts that the defendants Aaron James McKinney and Russell Arthur Henderson met Matthew Shepard at the Fireside Bar, and after Mr. Shepard confided in them that he was gay, the subjects deceived Mr. Shepard into getting into their vehicle and driving to a remote area. Upon arrival at said area, the subjects tied Mr. Shepard up to a buck fence, beat him, tortured him, and robbed him. The subjects were later contacted by the officers of the Laramie Police Department, who observed in their cab pickup a credit card, a wallet, and a pair of black patent leather shoes belonging to the victim, Matthew Shepard.
I don't think there was
The subjects took the victim's credit card,
anyone left in that courtroom who wasn't crying at the end of it.
a wallet containing $20, shoes, and other various items.
I mean, it lasted 5 minutes, but
They also obtained the victim's address to later burglarize his home.
it kept getting more and more horrific, ending with
Said defendants left the victim begging for his life.
Sergeant Hing.
How could this happen? I don't even know how it could happen. I don't understand how someone can do something like that. I mean, we have one of the most vocal populations of gay people in the state. It's pretty much a live and let live.
Laramie resident Jeffrey Lockwood.
My secret hope was that they were from somewhere else. That then, of course, you can create that distance. We don't grow children like that here. Well, it's pretty clear that we do grow children like that here.
So, that was the arraignment. And my response was pretty catatonic. Not eating, not sleeping. Don't leave me alone right now.
More and more details came in about the sheer brutality, motivations, how this happened. And quite frankly, the media descended, and there was no time to reflect on it anymore.
Laramie, Wyoming, often known as the Gem City of the Plains, is now at the eye of the storm.
Aaron McKinney and his friend Russell Henderson came from the poor side of town.
As a gay college student lay hospitalized in critical condition after a severe beating.
People would like to think that what happened to Matthew was an exception to the rule, but in reality it was an extreme version of what happens in our schools on a daily basis.
It's a tough business, as Matt Shepard knew, and his friends all know, to be gay in this cowboy country.
It was huge. Yeah, it was herds, and we're talking hundreds of reporters, which makes a huge dent in this town's population. There's reporters everywhere, news trucks everywhere in campus, everywhere in town. And we're not used to that type of attention to begin with. We're not used to that type of exposure.
Tiffany Edwards, local reporter.
These people are predators. Like, one of the journalists actually caught one of the judges at the urinal in the bathroom and was like asking him all these questions, and the judge was like, "Excuse me, can I please have some privacy?" And the journalist got offended that he asked for privacy. I mean, this is not how journalism started. Like, the Gutenberg Press, you know?
I'll tell you what. When hard copy came and taped me, I taped him at the exact same time. I have every word I've ever said on tape. So if they ever do anything funny, they better watch their fucking ass.
Wyoming Governor Jim Gallagher. First-time Republican up for re-election.
I am outraged and sickened by the heinous crime committed on Matthew Shepard. I extend my most heartfelt sympathies to the family.
Governor, you haven't pushed hate crime legislation in the past.
I would like to urge the people of Wyoming against overreacting in a way that gives one group special rights over the others. We will wait and see if the vicious beating and torture of Matthew Shepard was in fact motivated by hate.
You got the beginning of a news story where they got the graphics in the background, and they got murder in Wyoming, and Wyoming's dripping red like it's got blood in it or something. And it's like, what is this? This is sensationalism. And we're here going, wait a minute, we had the guys in jail in less than a day. I think that's pretty damn good.
And for us to be more or less maligned.
Eileen and Gil Engen.
That we're not a good community, and we are. The majority of people here are good people.
You get bad apples once in a while, and I think the gay community took this as an advantage. It's a good time for us to exploit this.
Bill McKinney, father of one of the accused.
Had this been a heterosexual these two boys decided to take out and rob, this would have never made the national news. Now my son is guilty before he's even had a trial.
Look, I think that that the media actually made people accountable because they made people think. Because people were sitting in their homes watching TV and listening to CNN and Dan Rather and going, well, Jesus Christ, that's not how it is here. Well, then how is it here?
Matthew Shepard, medical update, 3 p.m., Saturday, October 10th.
By this point, I looked out there, and where there had been 2 or 3 reporters, it must have been 10 to 15 still photographers, another 20 to 30 reporters, and 10 video cameras. The family had just arrived, and I had barely introduced myself. I looked out there, and I thought, my gosh, what am I going to do? Matthew Shepard was admitted in critical condition approximately 9:15 p.m. October 7th. When he arrived, he was unresponsive and breathing support was being provided. Matthew's major injuries upon arrival consisted of hypothermia and a fracture from behind his head to just in front of his right ear. This had caused bleeding in the brain as well as pressure on the brain. There were also several lacerations on his head, face, and neck. Matthew's temperature has fluctuated over the last 24 hours, ranging from 98 to 106 degrees. We've had difficulty controlling his temperature. Matthew's parents arrived at 7 p.m. October 9th and are now at his bedside. The following is a statement from them. First of all, we want to thank the American public for their kind thoughts and their fond wishes for his speedy recovery. We appreciate your prayers and goodwill, and we know that there's something Matthew would appreciate too. We also have a special request from the members of the media. Matthew is very much in need of his family at this moment, and we ask that you respect our privacy as well as our son's, so we can concentrate all our thoughts, love, and prayer on him. Thank you very much.
McKinney and Russell Henderson pled not guilty to charges. Their girlfriends Chastity Pasley and Kristen Price also pled not guilty after being charged as accessories after the fact. On our next trip, we discussed with the Chief Investigating Officer, Detective Rob Debris of the Albany County Sheriff's Department.
I guess the thing that bothered me the most when I went down to Porter Valley to see Matthew was seeing him, touching him. As a homicide detective, you deal with bodies. This kid's still there, fighting all of his life, and I just wanted it so by the book, you know?
I keep seeing that picture in my head when I found him.
Aaron Cruffles.
And it's not pleasant whatsoever. I don't want it to be there. I want to get it out. That's the biggest part for me, seeing that picture in my head. And it's kind of unbelievable to me, that I happen to be the person that found him. Because the big question with me, with my religion, is why did God want me to find him?
I know how to take care of myself, and I was irrationally terrified.
Catherine Connolly.
So what that means is not letting my son walk the streets, seeing a truck do a U-turn and thinking it's coming after me, having to stop because I'm shaking so bad. And, in fact, the pickup truck did not come after me, but my reaction was to have my heart in my throat.
Ultimately, no matter how you dice it, I did have an opportunity.
Matt Galloway.
If I had amazing hindsight of 2020 to have stopped what had happened, and I keep thinking, these guys shouldn't have been talking to this guy. I should have not had my head down for those 20 seconds. Things that I could have done. What the hell was I thinking?
So you do a lot of studying. For hours and hours, you study and study and study. Talk to your officers, make sure that they understand. Talking to your witnesses, but then always just coming back around to... I get this flash of seeing Matthew. I wanted it so by the book that there was no way that they were going to get out of this,
One of the things that happened when I got to the fence...
Reggie Flutie.
It was just such an overwhelming amount of blood. And we tried to wear protective gloves, but we had a cheap sheriff at the time, and he bought us shit gloves, You put them on, and you put them on, and they kept breaking. So finally, you just ran out of gloves, So, well, you figure, don't hesitate. That's what your mind keeps telling you. Don't hesitate. And so you keep moving, and you try to help Matthew find an airway, and that's what you do,
The thing I wasn't telling you before is that Reggie is my daughter.
Marge Murray.
And when she first told me she wanted to be a police officer, well, I thought there was not a better choice for her. She could handle whatever came her way.
Probably a day and a half later, the hospital called me and told me Matthew had HIV. And they said, you'd been exposed. You'd had a bad exposure. Because, you see, I'd been building a lean-to for my llamas. And I had a bunch of open cuts on my hands. So I was kind of screwed, So I think, oh, shoot.
Would you like to talk about losing sleep?
So I said to the doctor, okay, what do I do? They said, get up there. So I got up there and we started the ATZ drugs immediately.
Now, they told me that's medication that if it's administered 36 hours after you've been exposed, it can maybe stop you getting the disease.
That is a mean, nasty medicine. Mean. I've lost 10 pounds and a lot of hair.
And quite frankly, I wanted to lash out at somebody. Not at Matthew. Please understand that. Not one of us was mad at Matthew. But we maybe wanted to squeeze McKinney's head off. And I think about Henderson. And, two absolutely human beings cause so much grief for so many people. It has been terrible for me and my family, mostly for her and her kids.
I think it brought home to my girls what their mother does for a living.
Well, Reggie, you know what I'm going to tell you now?
And my parents told me, they both said the same damn thing.
You're quitting this damn job.
And it's just a parent thing, And they're terribly proud of you because you do a good job, whether it's handling a drunk or a case like this. But you're, they don't want you getting hurt.
Like I said, there's a right way, a wrong way, and then there's Reggie's way.
So finally I said, oh, for God's sakes, lighten up, Francis.
You are so stubborn.
They say I'm stubborn, but I don't believe them. I just think, okay, I heard your opinion and now here's mine. I'm 39 years old, What are they going to do, spank me?
Reggie, don't give me any ideas.
It looked pretty funny, What can they say?
I just hope she doesn't go before me. I just couldn't handle that.
University of Wyoming President Philip Dubois.
Well, this is a young person who read my statement on the Denver Post story and sent an email to me directly and said,
You and the straight people of Laramie and Wyoming are guilty of the beating of Matthew Shepard. Just as the Germans who look the other way are guilty of the deaths of the Jews, the Gypsies, and the homosexuals. You have taught your straight children to hate their gay and lesbian brothers and sisters. Unless and until you acknowledge that Matt Shepard's beating was not just a random occurrence, not just the work of a couple of random crazies, you have Matthew's blood on your hands.
and, well, I just can't begin to tell you what that does to you. It's just like, you can't possibly know what I'm thinking. You can't possibly know what this has done to my family and my community.
That first week alone, vigils for Matthew Shepard were held in Laramie, Denver, Fort Collins, and Colorado Springs. Soon after, in Detroit, Chicago, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Nashville, Minneapolis, and in Portland, Maine. In Los Angeles, 5,000 people gathered. In New York, a rally ended in civil disobedience and hundreds of arrests. The Poudre Valley Hospital had close to 1 million viewers across the country and around the world, all expressing hope for Matthew's recovery. Matthew Shepard, medical update, 9 a.m., Sunday, October 11th.
As of 9 a.m. today, Matthew Shepard remains in critical condition. The family wants to emphasize that the media respect their privacy. The family also wants to thank the American public for their kind thoughts and concern for Matthew.
There are certain things when I sit in church.
Jedediah Schultz.
And the Reverend will tell you flat out that he doesn't agree with homosexuality. And I don't know, I think right now I'm going through changes. You know, I'm still learning about myself, and I don't think I know enough about certain things to make a decision that says that homosexuality is right when you've been raised your whole life that it's wrong. Right now, I would say that I don't agree with it. Yeah, no, I don't agree with it, but maybe that's just because I couldn't do it. And speaking in religious terms, I don't think that's how God intended it to happen. But I don't hate homosexuals. I mean, like I'm not gonna persecute them or anything like that at all. Like it's not gonna be getting in the way between me and the other person at all.
Well, it's preached in schools that being gay is okay and yada yada yada.
Conrad Miller.
And if my kids asked me, I'd set them down and I'd say, well, this is what gay people do. This is what animals do, okay? And I'd tell them, this is the life. This is the lifestyle. This is what they do. And I'd say, this is why I believe it's wrong.
There's more gay people around than what you think.
Murdoch.
It doesn't bother anybody because most of them that are gay or lesbian, they know damn well who to talk to. Step out of line, you're asking for it. Some people are saying to me to pass it to them. You don't pick up regular people. I'm not excusing their actions, but it made me feel better because it was partially Matthew Shepard's fault and partially the guys who did it. You know, maybe it's 50-50.
Yes. As a lesbian, I was more concerned for my safety.
Zachy Salmon.
I think we all were. And I think it's because somewhere inside, we all know it could happen to us anytime, you know? I mean, I would be afraid to walk down the street and display any sort of physical affection for my partner. You don't do that here in Laramie.
Well, there's this whole idea. You leave me alone, I leave you alone.
Jonas Loneker.
And it's even in some of the Western literature, you know, live and let live. Yeah, that one. That is such crap. I'll tell my friends that. Even my gay friends bring it up sometimes. I'm like, that is crap, you know? I mean, basically what it boils down to. If I don't tell you if I'm a fag, you won't beat the crap out of me. I mean, what's so great about that? That's a great philosophy?
We went to the candle vigil.
Zubaida Ula.
And it was so good to be with people who felt like shit, you know? And someone got up there and he said, blah, 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 blah. I'm saying it wrong, but basically he said, come on, guys. Let's show the world that Laramie's not this kind of town. But it is this kind of town. If it wasn't this kind of town, then why did this happen here? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, that's a lie. Because it happened here, so how could it not be a town where this kind of thing happens? You know what I mean? Like, that's just totally like looking at an Escher painting and getting all confused. Like, that's just totally like circular logic. Like, how can you say that? And we have to mourn this. And we have to be sad that we live in a town, a state, a country where shit like this happens. I mean, these are people trying to distance themselves from this crime. And we need to own this crime. I feel everyone needs to own this crime. We are like this. We are like this. We are like this.
I was at the Fireside Bar one afternoon when I ran into two friends of Aaron McKinney, Shannon and Jen. You two knew Aaron well, right?
Yeah, we both did. When I first found out, I thought it was really, really awful. I don't know whether everyone was coming down or whether he was fucked up or what. But Matthew had money. Shit, he had better clothes than I did. Matthew was a little rich bitch.
You shouldn't call him a rich bitch, though. That's not right.
Well, I'm not saying he's a bad guy either, because he's just in the wrong place at the wrong time and said the wrong things. And I don't know. I won't lie to you. There were some times where I was all messed up on meth and thought about going out and robbing. I mean, I never did. But yeah, it's there. It's easy money.
Aaron's done that thing before. They both done it. One night, they went down to Cheyenne and they came back with probably about $300. I don't know if they ever chose, like, gay people as their particular targets before, but anyone who looked like they had a lot of money and was, you know, easy to overpower and outnumber was fair game.
Do you think there was any homophobia at all involved with this that could have contributed to some of it?
Probably. It probably would have pissed him off that Matthew was gay because he didn't like. The gay people that I saw him interact with were fine, as long as they didn't flirt with him or anything. As long as it didn't come up.
As long as they weren't doing it in front of him.
Do you get the impression that he knew other gay people?
I'm sure that he knew people that are gay. I mean, he worked up at the KFC, and there was a couple of people up there that, yeah. Oh, and I'm not saying it's bad or anything, because, I don't know, half the people I know here in Laramie are gay.
What would you guys say to Aaron if you saw him now?
First of all, I'd ask him if he'd do any more tweak.
If I saw Aaron now, I'd be like, man, why'd you fuck up like that? But I want to make sure he was doing good in there. But he probably is, though. I just want to hang out with him.
Smoke a bowl with him.
I bet he wants one so bad.
So you guys both went to Laramie High?
Can't you tell? We're a product of our society.
On a day that is traditionally given over to nothing more profound than collegiate exuberance and the fortunes of the University of Wyoming football team, this community on the high school plains had a different kind of homecoming Saturday, as many searched their souls in the wake of a vicious, apparent anti-gay hate crime.
University President Philip Dubois.
This was homecoming weekend. There were a lot of people in town, and there's this homecoming parade that was scheduled, and then the students organized to tag onto the back of it, you know, behind the banner supporting Matthew, and everyone was wearing the armbands that the students had created.
I live in the center of town.
Harry Woods.
And my apartment has windows on two opposite streets. One goes north and one goes south, and that is a homecoming parade route. Now, on the day of the parade, I had to cast my leg because of a fall. So I was very disappointed because I wanted to walk with the people that were marching for Matthew Shepard, but I couldn't. So I looked out from my window, and it was just, I'm 52 years old and I'm gay. I've lived here for many years and I've seen a lot. And I was very moved when I saw the tag at the end of the homecoming parade. About 100 people walking behind a banner for Matthew Shepard. So then the parade went down the street to make a U-turn, and I went to the other side of my apartment to wait for it to go south down the other street.
I was right up front, where they were holding the banner for Matthew. And let me tell you, I have never had goosebumps for so long in my life. It was incredible. A mass of people, families, mothers holding these 6-year-old kids, tying these armbands around these 6-year-old kids, and trying to explain to them why they should wear an armband. It was absolutely one of the most beautiful things I've ever done in my entire life.
Well, about 10 minutes passed by, and sure enough, the parade started coming down the street. And then I noticed the most incredible thing. As the parade started coming down the street, the number of people walking for Matthew Shepard had grown 5 times. There was at least like 500 people marching for Matthew Shepard. 500 people. Can you imagine? The tag at the end was bigger than the entire parade itself. And people kept joining in. And you know what? I started to cry. Tears were streaming down my face. And I thought, thank God I got to see this in my lifetime. And my second thought was, thank you, Matthew.
I really haven't been all that involved, per se. My husband's a highway patrolman, so that's really the only way that I've known about it. Now, when I first found out, I just thought it was horrible. I can't. Nobody deserves that. I don't care who you are, but the other thing that was not brought out, at the same time that happened, that patrolman was killed. And there was nothing. Nothing. They didn't say anything about the old man that killed him. He was driving down the road and he shouldn't have been driving and killed him. And it was just a little piece in the paper. And we lost one of our guys. You know, my husband worked with him. I mean, this man was brand new on the force. But I mean, here's one of ours, and it was just a little piece in the paper. And a lot of it is my feeling that the media's portraying Matthew Shepard as a saint and making him as a martyr, and I don't think he was. I don't think he was that pure. Now, I didn't know him, but there's so many things about him that I found out that it's scary, you know? About his character and spreading AIDS and a few other things. Being the kind of person that he was just a barfly, you know? And I think he pushed himself around. I think he flaunted it. Everybody's got problems, but why they exemplified him, I don't know. What's the difference if you're gay? A hate crime is a hate crime. If you murder somebody, you hate him. It doesn't matter if you're gay or prostitute or whatever. I don't understand. Don't understand.
Company member Lee Fondakowski.
This is one of our last days on our second trip to Laramie. Greg and I have been conducting interviews nonstop, and we're exhausted.
We are to meet Father Roger at 7:30 in the morning. I was wishing we'd skip it all together, but we had to follow through to the end. So here we go. 7:30 a.m., 2 queers and a Catholic priest. Matthew Shepard has served us well. You realize that. He has served us well. And I don't mean to condemn Matthew to perfection, but I cannot mention anyone who's done more for this community than Matthew Shepard. I'm not going to sit here and say I was this bold guy. No fear. I was scared. I was very vocal in this community when this happened. And, I thought, should we call the bishop and ask for permission to the vigil? And I was like, oh no, I'm not going to do that. His permission doesn't make it correct. You realize that. And I'm not knocking bishops, oh no, but what is correct is correct. You people are out here on a search though. I will do this. I would trust you people that if you write a play of this, that you say it right. Say it correct. I think your responsibility to do that. Just don't make matters worse. You think violence what they did to Matthew? Well, they did do violence to Matthew, but every time that you called a fag or called a les or whatever.
Or a dyke.
Dyke. Yes, dyke. Do you realize that is violence? That is the seed of violence, and I would resent it immensely if anything I said to somehow cultivate that kind of violence. Even in the smallest form, I would resent it immensely. You need to know that.
Thank you, Father, for saying that.
Just deal with what is true. You know what is true. You need to do your best to say it correct.
Andrew Gomez.
I was in there. I was in jail with them in December. Got thrown in over Christmas. Assault and battery, 2 counts. I don't want to talk about it. We were sitting there You know, Christmas dinner, trying to eat my stuffing, my motherfucking bread, my little rolls and whatnot. And I was like, hey, homie, tell me something. Tell me something, please. Why did you... Okay, I'm thinking of how I worded this. I was like, why did you kill a faggot if he doesn't to be a faggot later? You know, I mean, think about it. He's either going to get humped a lot or he's going to die. So think about that. I don't understand that. You know what he told me? Honest to God, this is what he said. He goes, try to grab my dick. That's what he said, man. He's dumb, dog. He didn't even act like it was nothing. Now, I heard they was auctioning those boys off. Up there in the Max Ward, you know, where the killers go. I heard that when they first found out Aaron was coming to prison, they was auctioning those boys off. I want him, I'll put aside 5, 6, 7 cartons of cigarettes. Auction his ass off. I'd be scared to go to prison if I was those two boys.
Hello?
Reverend?
Yes, hello?
I believe your husband told you a bit about why I'm contacting you.
Yes, he did. And, let me just tell you, I'm not sure I want to talk to anyone about, any of this incident. I'm just somewhat involved and I just don't think...
Yes, I completely understand, and I don't blame you. You know, I went to your service on Sunday.
You went to the services on Sunday?
Yes, I did.
On Sunday?
Yes, this past Sunday.
Did I meet you?
Yes, you welcomed me at the beginning, I believe.
I see. Well, let me just say that I'm not afraid to be controversial or to speak my mind, and that's not necessarily the views of my congregation, per se. As I said before, I'm somewhat involved. The accused, the girlfriend of the accused, is part of our congregation, and one of the accused has visited. Now, those two people, the accused, have forfeited their lives. We've been after the two that I mentioned for ages, trying to get them to live right, to do right. And now one boy's on suicide watch, and I'm working with him. Until they throw him in the chair and turn the juice on, I'll work for his salvation. Now, I think they deserve the death penalty, but I will try to deal with them spiritually.
Right, I understand.
Now, as for the victim, I will tell you one thing. I know that lifestyle is legal, but I hope that Matthew Shepard, as he was tied to that fence, had time to reflect on a moment when someone had spoken the word of the Lord to him. And I hope that before he fell into that coma, he was able to reflect on his lifestyle.
Thank you, Reverend. I appreciate your speaking with me.
At 11:30 that night, I had just barely gone to bed. And Margot, our chief operating officer, called and said his blood pressure began to drop. Well, let's wait and see. She called me about 10 after. He just died. So I quick got dressed and came in and went to the ICU where the family was. And Judy came up to me and she put her arms around me and I put my arms around her and we just stood there, honestly, for about 10 minutes just because what else do you do? And then we had to sit down and talk about things that just... Dennis, it's now public knowledge and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to tell the whole world that this had happened. Because by this point, it was clear to us that it was the whole world. It really was the whole world. And so Judy told me what she wanted me to say. And I went out there at 4:00 a.m.
Matthew Shepard, medical update, 4 a.m. Monday, October 12th.
At 12 midnight, on Monday, October 12th, Matthew Shepard's blood pressure began to drop. We immediately notified the family, who were already at the hospital. At 12:53, Matthew Shepard died. His family was at his bedside. The family did release the following statement. The family again asked me to express their sincerest gratitude to the entire world for their overwhelming response to their son. The family was grateful that they did not have to make a decision regarding whether or not to continue life support for him. Like a good son, he was caring until the end, and removed stress and guilt from the family. He came into this world premature, and he left the world premature. Matthew's mother said, "Go home, hug your kids, and don't let a day go by without telling them that you love them." And I don't know how I let that happen. I lost it on national television. But, we had been up for like 72 hours straight. Well, only to go home and go to sleep for half an hour and get up and come in, and maybe I was just, I don't know. But in a moment of complete brain deadness, while I was out there reading that statement, I started thinking of my own 4 daughters and go home and hug your kids. And she doesn't have her kid anymore. And I'm here thinking, this is so lame. And then people started sending us letters, and majority of them were generally very kind, but I did get this one. This guy wrote me and said, "You cry like a baby on TV for all your patients, or just the faggots?" And as I told you before, homosexuality is not a lifestyle with which I agree, but having been thrown into this, I never understood the magnitude to which some people could hate. And of all the letters that we got, there were maybe 2 or 3 that were just like that. Most of them were just, "Thank you and for your caring and compassion for Matthew." And Matthew had caring and compassion from the moment he got here.
I spoke with Doc today and told him that we'd soon be coming back up for the upcoming trials of Russell Henderson and Laramie King. This is what he had to say.
I'll tell you what. If they put those 2 boys to death, that'll defeat everything Matt would be thinking about them. Because Matt would not want those 2 boys to die. He wants to leave them with hope. Hope. Just like the whole world hoped that Matt would survive. The whole thing, you see? The whole thing ropes around hope. Hope.
The day of the funeral. It was snowing so bad. Big, huge, wet snowflakes. When I got there were thousands of people, all dressed in black. Umbrellas everywhere. And there were 2 churches. One for the immediate family, invited guests, people of that nature. And then another one for everybody else who wanted to be there. And even still, there were hundreds of people who couldn't fit into either church. And there was a big park near the church. That's where these people were. And this park was full.
The liturgy today is the Easter liturgy. It finds its meaning in the resurrection. The service invites your full participation. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Let us pray.
And I guess it was like the worst storm that they've had.
Tiffany Edwards.
Like, anybody could ever tell. Like, trees fell down and the power went out for a couple days because of it. And I just thought, it's like the forces of the universe at work, Like, whatever higher power that blows storms was blowing this one.
For our brother Matthew, let us pray to our Lord Jesus Christ, who said, "I am the resurrection and the life." We pray to the Lord.
Hear us, Lord.
Lord, you who consoled Martha and Mary in distress, draw near to us who mourn for Matthew, and dry the tears of those who weep. We pray to the Lord.
Hear us, Lord.
You wept at the grave of your friend Lazarus. Comfort us in our sorrows. We pray to the Lord.
Hear us, Lord.
You raised the dead to life. Give to our brother eternal life. We pray to the Lord.
Hear us, Lord.
You promised paradise to the thief who repented. Bring to our brother the joys of heaven. We pray to the Lord.
Hear us, Lord.
He was nourished with your body and blood. Grant him a place at the table in your heavenly kingdom. We pray to the Lord.
Hear us, Lord.
Comfort us in our sorrows of the death of our brother. Let our faith be our consolation, and eternal life our hope. We pray to the Lord.
My most striking memory from the funeral
Carrie Drake, Casper Star Tribune.
is seeing the Reverend Fred Phelps from Kansas. That scene go up in the park.
Do you believe in the Bible? Do you believe that you're supposed to separate the precious from the vile? You don't believe in that part of the Bible? You stand there ignorant over the fact that the Bible, 2 times for every verse, it talks about God's love, it talks about God's hate.
A bunch of high school kids who got out early, they came over and started yelling at these people in the protest. The Fred Phelps people. And across the street had people lining up for the funeral. Well, I remember a guy. I remember this skinhead who was dressed in leather and spikes everywhere. He came over from across the street where the protest was, and he came into the crowd, and I just thought, this is going to be a real ugly confrontation. But instead, he started leading the people in amazing grace.
We wouldn't be here if this was just another murder the state was gonna deal with. This state deals with hundreds of murders every single day. But this murder is different. Because the fags are bringing us out here trying to make Matthew Shepard into a poster boy for the gay lifestyle. And we're going to answer it. It's just that simple.
6 months later, the company returned to Laramie for the trial of Russell Henderson, the first of the 2 perpetrators. It was to be a capital murder trial. When we got to the county courthouse, Fred Phelps was already there.
You don't like that attribute of God.
But so was Romaine Patterson.
That perfect attribute of God. Well, we love that attribute of God. And we're going to preach it. Because God's hatred is so pure, it's a determination. It's a determination that he's going to send some people to hell. That's God's hatred. We're standing here with God's message. We are standing here with God's message. Is homosexual... Is being a fag okay? What do you mean it's not for you to judge? If God doesn't hate fags, why does he put them in hell? You see the barrenness and sterility of your silly arguments when set up against some solid gospel truth? Barren and sterile, like your lifestyles. Your silly little arguments.
After seeing Fred Phelps protesting at Matthew's funeral, I decided that someone had to stand toe-to-toe with this guy and show the differences. And I think at times like this, when we're talking about hatred as much as the nation is right now, that somebody somewhere needs to show that there's a better way of dealing with this kind of hatred. And so our plan is to dress up like angels, and we designed this angel outfit, and for our wings are huge. They're like these big ass wings, and there will be like 10 and 20 of us that are angels. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna walk in and encircle Phelps, and because of our big wings, we're gonna completely block him. And so this band of angels walks in. We don't say a fucking word. We're just a group of people bringing forth a message of peace and love and compassion. And we're gonna call it Angel Action. Yeah. This 21-year-old little lesbian is ready to walk the line with this guy.
Now, when those old preachers lay their hands on me, it's called an ordination. Then they deliver a charge. Mine was from Isaiah 58:1. Cry aloud, spare not, lift up thy voice like a trumpet, and show my people their transgressions.
And I knew that my angels were going to be taking the brunt of everything he had to yell and say. I mean, we were going to be blocking him, and he was going to be like pissed off to all hell. So I went out and bought all my angels earplugs.
The court is in session.
Romaine Patterson's sister, Trish Steger.
As soon as they started jury selection, everyone was coming into my shop with, I don't want to be on that jury. I hope they don't call me, or, oh my god, I've been called. How do I get off? Just wanting to get as far away from it as they could. Very fearful that they were going to be part of that jury. And then I heard Henderson had to sit in the courtroom while they questioned prospective jurors. And one of the questions they ask is, would you be willing to put this person to death? And I understand a lot of the comments were, yes, I would.
Yes, I would, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
No problem.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Well, can you imagine hearing that? Juror after juror after juror after juror?
You entered a not guilty plea earlier, Mr. Henderson, but I understand you wish to change your plea today. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You understand, Mr. Henderson, that the recommended sentence here is 2 life sentences.
Yes, sir.
Do you understand that those may run concurrently, or they may run consecutively?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Henderson, I will now ask you how you wish to plead. Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Before the court decides whether the sentences will be concurrent or consecutive, I understand there is a statement to be made by at least one individual.
This is an excerpt made to the court by Lucy Thompson.
As the grandmother and the person who raised Russell, along with my family, we have written the following statement. Our hearts ache for the pain and suffering that the shepherds have went through. We have prayed for your family since the very beginning. Many times throughout the day, I have thought about Matt, and you will continue to be in our thoughts and prayers, as we know that your pain will never go away. You have shown such mercy in allowing us to have this plea, and we are so grateful that you are giving us all the opportunity to live. Your Honor, we hope, as a family, that as you sentence Russell, that you do it concurrently 2 life terms. For the Russell we know and love, Your Honor, please do not take Russell completely out of our lives forever.
Mr. Henderson, you have the constitutional right to make a statement if you would like to do so. Do you have anything you would like to say?
Yes, I would, Your Honor. Mr. and Mrs. Shepard, there's not a moment that goes by that I don't see what happened that night. I know what I did was very wrong, and I regret greatly what I did. You have my greatest sympathy for what happened. I hope that one day you will be able to find it in your hearts to forgive me. Your Honor, I know what I did was wrong. I'm very sorry for what I did. I'm ready to pay my debt for what I did.
Mr. Henderson, you drove the vehicle that took Matthew Shepard to his death. You tied him to that fence that he might be more savagely beaten, and that he won't live to tell his tale. You knew he was there for 18 hours, perhaps having an opportunity to save his life. And you did nothing. Mr. Henderson, this court does not believe that you really feel any remorse for your part in this matter. And I wonder whether you fully realize the gravity of what you've done. The court finds it appropriate, therefore, that sentencing be ordered as follows. As to count 3, that being felony murder with robbery, you are to serve a period of imprisonment for the term of your natural life. On count 1, kidnapping, that you are to serve a period of imprisonment for the term of your natural life. Sentencing for count 1 to run consecutive to sentencing for count 3.
After the hearing, we spoke with Russell Henderson's Mormon home teacher.
I've known Russell's family for 38 years. Russell's only 21, so I've known him his entire life. I ordained Russell a priest of the Mormon Church, so when this happened, you can imagine disbelief. After the sentencing, the church held a disciplinary council, and the result of that meeting was to excommunicate Russell from the Mormon Church. And what that means is that your name is taken off the records of the church, so you just disappear. Russell's reaction to this was not positive. It hurt him, and it hurt him to realize how serious a transgression he had committed. But I will not desert Russell. That is a matter of my religion and my friendship with the family.
Before we left Laramie, we met again with Rebecca Hilker, head of the theater department. She's producing Angels in America this year at the university.
I think that's the focus the university has taken, is that we have a lot of work to do, that we have an obligation to find ways to reach our students. And the question is, how do we move? How do we reach a whole state where there is some really deep-seated hostility towards gays? How do you reach them? This is just the beginning. And guess who's auditioning for the lead?
My parents!
Jedediah Schultz.
My parents were like, so what plays are you doing at school this year? And I was like, Angels in America. I told them this whole list of plays. And they're like, Angels in America? Is that play you did in high school? That scene you did in high school? And I was like, yeah. And she goes, huh. So, are you gonna audition for it? And I was like, yeah. And we got in this huge argument. And the best thing I knew I had on them is that it was just after they had seen me in a performance of Macbeth. And on stage, I murdered a little kid and Lady Macduff and these two other guys. And she goes, you know what, like homosexuality's a sin. She kept saying that, and I go, Mom, I just played a murderer tonight, and you didn't seem to have a problem with that. I tell you, I've never prepared myself this much for an audition in my life. Never ever. Not even close.
Having that much to deal with the gay society here in Laramie.
Detective Sergeant Rob Debris.
Once we started working into the case and talking to the people that were gay and finding out what their underlying fears were, well, then it sort of hit home. This is America. You don't have the right to feel that fear here. And we're still going to have people who hold with the old ideals. Hell, I was probably one of them 14 months ago. And if I'm not gonna listen to it. And if they don't like my views on it, fine. I've already lost a couple buddies. I don't care. I feel more comfortable, and I can sleep at night.
Well, you're tested every 3 months.
Reggie Flutie.
And I was able to have the DNA test done. And so they got me to Fort Collins, and they drew the blood there. They flew out to Michigan and did all the DNA work there. And which was a week later, I knew I was negative for good.
I'll tell you, we were all on our knees saying Hail Marys.
You were just elated, and you think, thank God.
So what's the first thing she does?
I stuck my tongue right in my husband's mouth. I was just so happy. You're just so happy. You think, yeah, I hope I did this service well. I hope I did it with some kind of integrity. So you're just really happy. And my daughter's just bawled.
They were so happy.
And the force.
Oh boy.
We went out and got shit-faced. They all bought me drinks too. It was great. And everybody hugged and cried and, I kissed everybody that walked through that door.
Reggie, they don't even know that.
I didn't care if they were male or female. They each got a kiss on the lips.
Now what part of what I just said didn't you understand?
Oh, get over it, Ma.
Almost a year to the day that Matthew Shepard died, the trial for Aaron James McKinney was set to begin.
Probably the question most of you have on your mind is how the McKinney's case will proceed.
Cal Rayrucha, prosecuting attorney.
And it's the decision of the county's attorney office that will definitely be the death penalty case.
Part of me wants McKinney to get it, but I'm not very proud of that. I was on and off and on, but I just can't say what I would do. I'm too personally involved.
Oh, I believe in the death penalty 100%, because I want to make sure that guy's ass dies. There's one instance where I truly believe, with all my heart, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth.
I don't know about the death penalty, but I don't ever want to see them ever walk out of Rollins Penitentiary. I'll pay my nickel or whatever, my little percentage of tax, a nickel a day, to make sure that his ass stays in there and never sees society again, and most definitely never comes into my bar again.
I don't believe in the death penalty. It's too much for me. I don't believe that one person should be killed as redemption for having killed another. Two wrongs don't make a right.
How can I protest if the Shepherds want McKinney dead? I just can't interfere in that. But on a personal level, I knew Aaron in grade school. We never called him Aaron, though. He was called AJ. How can we put AJ McKinney how can we put A.J. McKinney to death?
I think right now our most important teachers must be Russell Henderson and Aaron McKinney. They have to be our teachers. How did you learn? How did we, as a society, do to teach you that? See, I don't even know if people let them be their teachers. Personally, I think it would be wonderful. The judge said, in addition to your sentence, you must tell your story. You must tell your story.
All rise. State of Wyoming versus Aaron James McKinney. Docket number 6381. The Honorable Barton R. Voights presiding. The court is in session.
During the trial of Aaron McKinney, the prosecution played a tape of his confession.
My name is Rob DeVries, Sergeant for the Sheriff's Office. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and may be used against you in the court of law.
The following is an excerpt of that confession.
Okay, so you guys, you and Russ, you go to the fireside. So you're at the fireside by yourselves, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Where do you go after you leave the fireside?
Some kid wanted to ride home.
What's he look like?
Like a queer. Such a queer, dude.
He looks like a queer?
Yeah, like a fag, you know?
Okay. How did you meet him?
He wanted to ride home, and I just thought, well, dude's drunk, let's just take him home.
When did you and Russ talk about jacking him up?
We kind of talked about it at the bar.
Okay. What happened next?
We drove him out past Walmart. We got there, and dude starts grabbing on my legs and grabbing my genitals. I'm like, look, I'm not a fucking faggot. If you touch me again, you're gonna get it. I don't know what the hell he was trying to do, but I beat him up pretty badly. I think I killed him.
What'd you beat him with?
Blacked out. My fists, my pistol, the butt of a gun. Wondering what happened to me. It's like I had a few beers and I don't know. It's like I could see what was going on, but I don't know. It's like somebody else was doing it.
What was the first thing he said or did in the truck that made you hit him?
Well, he put his hand on my leg and he slid his hand up like if he was gonna grab my balls.
When that defense team argued that McKinney did what he did because Matthew made a pass at him, I just wanted to vomit. Because that's like saying it's okay. It's like the Twinkie defense. When that guy killed Harvey Milk on Moscone, it's the same thing.
As much as part of me didn't want the defense of them saying that it was a gay bashing or that it was gay panic, part of me is really grateful because I was worried that in the trial they were going to try to say that it was a robbery or that it was about drugs. So when they used gay panic as their defense, I felt that this is good. If nothing else, the truth is going to be told. The truth is coming out.
Did he ever try to defend himself against you? Or try to hit you back?
Yeah, sorta. He tried his little swings or whatever, but wasn't really effective.
How many times did you guys hit him inside the truck before you guys stopped where you left him?
I'd say I hit him 2 or 3 times. Probably about 3 times with my fist and about 6 times with the pistol.
Did he ask you to stop?
Well, yeah, he was getting the shit kicked out of him.
What did he say?
After he asked me to stop, most all he was doing was screaming.
So Russ dragged him over to the fence and tied him up?
Yeah, something like that. I just remember Russ was laughing at first, but then he seemed pretty scared.
Was Matthew conscious when Russ tied him up?
Yeah, I told him to turn around and don't look at my license plate number because I'm scared he would tell the police. So that's why I asked him to read my license plate number. He read it, and that's why I hit him a few more times.
Just to be sure. So, obviously, you don't like gay people.
No, I don't.
Would you say you hate them?
I really don't hate them, but when they start coming on to me and stuff like that, that's when I get pretty aggravated.
Did he threaten you?
This gay dude?
Yeah.
Not really, no.
Can you answer me one thing? Why'd you guys take his shoes?
I'll never get to see my son again.
I don't know. You probably go to court sometime today.
Today? So I'm gonna go in there and plead guilty or not guilty today?
No. No. You're just gonna be arraigned today.
He is gonna die for sure?
There is no doubt that Mr. Shepard is going to die.
So what are they gonna give me? 25 to life or just a death penalty and get it over with?
That ain't our job. That's the judge's job, and the jury.
Has the jury reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor. We, the jury, impaneled and sworn to try the above entitled case, after having well and truly tried the matter, unanimously find as follows. As to the charge of kidnapping, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty. As to the charge of aggravated robbery, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty. As to the charge of first-degree felony murder kidnapping, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty. As to the charge of first-degree felony murder robbery, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty. As to the charge of premeditated first-degree murder, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, not guilty. As to the lesser-included offense of second-degree murder, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty.
Aaron McKinney was found guilty of felony murder, which meant the jury could give him the death penalty. That evening, Judy and Dennis Shepard were approached by McKinney's defense team, pleading for their client's life. The prosecution indicated to defer to the family's wishes or whether or not to pursue the death penalty. That following morning, Dennis Shepard made a statement to the court. Here is some of what he said.
My son Matthew didn't look like a winner. He was rather uncoordinated and wore braces from the age of 13 until the day he died. However, in his ultra-brief life, he proved that he was a winner. On October 6, 1998, my son tried to show the world he can win again. On October 12, 1998, my firstborn son and my hero lost. On October 12, 1998, my firstborn son and my hero died 50 days before his 22nd birthday. You know, I keep wondering the same thing when I first saw him. What would he have become? How could he have changed his piece of the world to make it better? Matt officially died in a hospital in Fort Collins, Colorado. He actually died on the outskirts of Laramie, tied to a fence. You, Mr. McKinney, along with your friend Mr. Henderson, left him out there by himself. But he wasn't alone. There were his lifelong friends with him. Friends that he had grown up with. You're probably wondering who these friends were. First, he had the beautiful night sky and the same stars and moon we would see through a telescope. Then, he had the daylight and the sun to shine on him. And through it all, he was breathing in the scents of pine trees from the snowy range. He heard the wind, the ever-present Wyoming wind, for the very last time. He had one more person with him. He had God. And I feel better knowing he wasn't alone. Matt's beating, hospitalization, and funeral focused worldwide attention on hate. Good is coming out of evil. People have said enough is enough. I miss my son, but I'm proud to say that he is my son. Judy has been quoted as being against the death penalty. It has been stated that Matt was against the death penalty. Both of these statements are wrong. Matt believed that there were certain crimes and incidents that justify the death penalty, and I too believe in the death penalty. I would like nothing better than to see you die, Mr. McKinney. However, this is the time to begin the healing process. To show mercy to someone who refused to show any mercy. Mr. McKinney, I'm going to grant you life as hard as it is for me to do so because of Matthew. Every time we celebrate Christmas, a birthday, the 4th of July, remember that Matt isn't. Every time you wake up in your prison cell, remember that you had the opportunity and the ability to stop your actions that night. You robbed me of something very precious, and I will never forgive you for it. Mr. McKinney, I'm going to grant you life in the memory of one who no longer lives. May you have a long life, and may you thank Matthew every day for it.
This is all that we lived and breathed for a year, daily. It's been my case, daily. Now it's over.
Maybe now we can go on and we could quit being stuck. You know?
It just hit me today, the minute I got out of the courthouse, that the reason God wanted me to find him is where he didn't have to die out there alone. You know? And if I wouldn't have come along, they wouldn't have found him for a couple of weeks at least. So it made me feel really good that he didn't have to die out there alone.
I'm just glad it's over. I really am. Testifying in that case was one of the hardest things that I've ever done. Don't get me wrong, I love the stage, I really do. But it's tricky, because what you have is you have lawyers questioning you from this angle, but the answers need to be funneling over this way, to the jury. So you have to establish some sort of funneling system, which is hard for me, because I'm a natural conversationalist, so it's only common nature for me to look at someone when I'm talking to them. I look at them and make eye contact. But it's hard when you literally have to scoot over, change your positioning in effect to funnel over to the jury. But I managed to do this several times throughout the course of my testimony.
On our last trip, I had the good fortune of seeing Jedediah Schultz play the role of Pryor in Angels in America. After a performance, we spoke. I didn't, for the longest time, let myself become personally involved in the whole Matthew Shepard thing. Just didn't seem real. Like, it just seemed way blown out of proportion. Like Matthew Shepard was just a name instead of an individual. I don't know. It's weird. It's so weird, man. I just feel bad. You know? For all the stuff I told you, for the person that I used to be. That's why I want to hear those interviews from last year when I said all that stuff. I don't know, I just can't believe I ever said all that stuff about homosexuals, you know? Like how did I ever let that stuff make me think that you were different from me?
This is Romaine Patterson.
Well, a year ago, I wanted to be a rock star. And now, obviously, that's changed in the fact that throughout the last year, I really realized my role in taking my part. So now, instead of going to school for music, I'm going to go to school for communications and political science because I definitely have a career in activism. Actually, I just recently found out I was going to be honored in Washington, D.C. by the Anti-Defamation League. And whenever I think about the Angels or any of the speaking that I've done, you know, Matthew gave me... Matthew's like guiding this little path with his light for me to walk down. And every time we get to a door, he just opens it and says, okay, next step. And if I get to be a rock star on the side, then okay.
This is Jonas Slonaker.
Change is not an easy thing, and I don't think people are up to it here. They got what they wanted, the two boys got what they deserve, and we look good now. Justice has been served, the OK Corral. We shot down the villains and the prostitutes on the train. The town cleaned up, and we don't need to talk about it anymore. You know, it's been years since Matthew Shepard died. They haven't passed shit in Wyoming. At a state level, any town, nobody anywhere has passed any kind of law, anti-discrimination laws or hate crime legislation. Nobody has passed anything anywhere. What comes out of this? What comes out of this that is concrete or lasting?
We all said we would meet again. One last time. At the fence.
I've been up to that side in a limousine, okay? And I remember to myself the night he and I drove around together. He said to me, Laramie sparkles, doesn't it? And from where he was, if you sit exactly where he was, up there, Laramie sparkles from there. With the low-lying cloud, it's the blue lights that's bouncing off the clouds from the airport that goes tss, 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 right over the whole city. I mean, it blows you away. Matt was right in that spot. And I could just picture in his eyes. I could just picture what he was seeing. The last thing that he saw on this earth was the sparkling lights.
We spent the last 2 days packing a year's worth of materials and saying our goodbyes. We've been here 6 times and conducted over 200 interviews. sure I cried when he said goodbye.
Marge was just like, and when he asked her how Laramie would feel seeing a play about itself, she said,
I think we'd enjoy it. To show it's not the hellhole of the earth would be nice. But that is up to how you portray us. And that in turn is up to how Laramie behaves.
Doc asked me if I wanted to ghostwrite a book about the whole event. Galloway offered me or anybody else a place to stay if and when we come back to Laramie. He also seemed interested as to whether there would be any open auditions for this play.
We left Laramie at about 7 in the evening. On the way to Denver, I looked in my rearview mirror to take one last look at the town.
And I would speak with you. I would trust that if you write a play of this, that you say it right. You need to do your best to say it correct.
And in the distance, I could see the sparkling lights of Laramie, Wyoming.